So good afternoon everybody, I'm Richard Fazackerley, I'm the Technical Director at Aesica Pharmaceuticals, and I'd like to give a short presentation to you today on using strategic partnerships for value creation from early stage development to manufacture of a product. So what I'm going to do in the next 20 minutes is really, give a quick overview of our company and what changes. I want to talk about strategic partnerships based on my and the company's experience. What are the advantages and pitfalls, key success factors. I also want to talk about value creation, really explore what that concept means and implications for pharmaceutical development. So obviously I'm part of Aesica. That's a company that's a part of Consort Medical, which is a combination of Aesica and Bestpac is the well-known provider. We're a full-service CDMO, so we provide, contract development and manufacturing, API, all the way through to, packed final product. The slide here gives you a short overview of the services that we offer, but essentially we do from API manufacturing, drug development, formulation development. We also do, in parallel, we have a drug device combination offering as well to the market. So really I want to talk now about pharmaceutical development. What are the challenges we face? We still have the challenge of a lot of candidate compounds going to drug discovery. There's a pretty aggressive attrition rate through clinical trials, and there's a very low success rate in terms of new chemical entities making it to market. Something about 1 in 500 to 1,000 roughly make it to market. The challenge with this process, obviously here, again using additional information, is there's the so-called valley of death, the translation gap, where obviously there's a lot of investment of time, effort and cost, and again with a reasonably high chance of attrition in the early stages. So obviously we're seeing a lot of attrition of products not making it to market, so essentially there's a lot of failure built into the system. And really in terms of value optimization, what you see is a very high investment during that period where there's likelihood of failure, and hopefully when you then, obviously the product is successful launch to market, there's a, reward went through its commercial life cycle, and then obviously when it starts to decline and move generic, obviously a decreasing return on the original investment. So the challenge is, from a value evolution is how do we minimize the cost in the early stages, get through to development, get through to launch and success in the market. And really the challenge is in today's market that we're spending about 10 to 15 years in development for those lucky few compounds that get through to the market, but then is this pretty short period before you get brand competition, and the average time before generic entry is about 10 to 12 years. So you've gone through all the effort to get your product to market, pretty quickly the market starts to get crowded, and then in 10 to 12 years, sometimes potentially earlier, you get early entrants into the market for generic competition, and there's a very rapid erosion of price and volume. Really what I want to talk about now is just a slight shift, is talk about value creation. So the primary value of the business is to create value for the customers and the stakeholders, and value isn't just financial. Financial is very easy, and obviously a lot of people focus on financial because it's very easy to measure. Value is really defined by the customer base and what that means. So it can be different aspects for different people. It definitely changes through the product life cycle. So value in the early stages might be getting data and proving proof of concept, whereas as you move towards launch, the emphasis on value will change. And when you see, and again using the European model, you see the value evolution, you can see there a number of key milestones during the development of a new chemical entity. You see obviously there, those milestones, value will be driven by very different things. Obviously when you're in the early stage development, there's a lot of focus on getting your clinical applications and obviously moving into a filing. Later stage, when you're looking to move your product into different markets, there'll be a shift in value emphasis. Here I've put down a list of what are potential value opportunities. It's not an exclusive list, it lists some of the factors. There are many different kinds of value propositions during that development phase, and here are some. But you can see, in addition to the financial aspects, there's a number of things there which could be seen as adding value. So really, I just want to make a slight shift into strategic partnerships. There's a lot of discussion about strategic partnerships. There's a lot of emphasis. You know, obviously, what is a great strategic partnership really creates mutual value and benefit for all the parties involved. It really is a balanced long-term relationship, and by long-term, if you look at the timescales of pharmaceutical development, you know, you can be looking at making a commitment 10, 15, 20 years plus. Really, it's about sharing risk and reward. There's alignment around common purpose. There's a commitment of appropriate resources, and it's really that focus on long-term view over short-term gain. But there's a lot of research out in the market that says a lot of strategic partnerships actually fail, and the failure rate is as high as 70%. And really, what's driving that? Why are these strategic partnerships everyone values so much failing? And I guess really the key is the bottom strata line, that it requires a lot of commitment and effort by all the involved parties. Strategic partnerships do not happen by chance. It's not a passive activity. It requires effort. Why would you partner? And again, it depends in today's environment, but obviously it allows, you know, the various companies involved to focus on their core competencies. You can obviously take some of the advantages list there. You can accelerate speed to market. You can leverage resource and capability, particularly in the early phases of development when failure is likely. You know, investing in a strategic partnership, so I guess is capabilities and access to technology is something you maybe don't want to invest in. You can access that through a strategic partnership. It can obviously allow for agility and velocity, and it can obviously give, I guess, reduced complexity, but also learning opportunities. So obviously working, I guess, with Aesica, you see a lot of people come along, development companies who want to access the manufacturing capabilities. It's a great way to do that without having to build a network and infrastructure. It's also a great way, I guess, is to focus on capabilities. Is if you're purely a research company, that's clearly your core competence, that's where you're there. Accessing expertise from an external perspective to help along with your projects is a real advantage. So I want to shift to say, well, how do you choose the right strategic partner? I guess is you've got to invest the time and effort in finding the right partner. There's many factors to consider. You're going to have cultural and corporate alignment, capabilities, geography, but finding the right partner to work with is key. It's got to find a partner you can work with on the basis, I guess, of commitment, trust and collaboration. So again, it's a collaborative relationship, so it focuses on the relationship and sustaining that, not just the outcomes and deliverables of a specific project. And again, clearly on the bottom is a relationship basically on the enforcement of a contractual agreement will not be successful. There'll be very limited flexibility. I will deliver to you what you want in the contract. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next contract. Really, a strategic partnership allows a lot more flexibility, and I guess a longer-term commitment allows that understanding and growth of understanding between parties. Common pitfalls. Again, there's a focus on the tactical, not the strategic aspects, trying to get to a certain time point very quickly. There's a lot of underestimating the effort required to build and maintain a relationship. Again, it requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of routine interaction. It requires, the time put in. One key factor that is a common pitfall is impatience. We've entered into a relationship, we're a few months in, we want to see results very, very quickly. So that kind of too quick, we want the relationship is not working, we don't think it's working quickly enough, it's based on limited data, the wrong decisions are made. Again, not anticipating the threats and potential mitigations. It's allowing a level of autonomy. There can be a tendency to try and want to see oversight of the other party's operation. That kind of doesn't necessarily engender trust. Lacks of transparency, and sometimes, occasionally, there's just not a willingness for people to collaborate. And if people don't want to collaborate or be transparent, the relationship will fail. So what are the key success factors? So there are 7 key success factors here, I guess, is as overarching, and we'll go into a bit more detail. It's around strong governance, measuring value and success and agreeing what that looks like. There's a lot about openness, transparency, honesty and responsiveness. Delivery is obviously key, mutual trust and confidence. Achieving mutual goals to deliver mutual benefits. Again, if a relationship gets one-sided either way, it isn't going to work. And giving extra value, so identifying those opportunities as you go through. So what I'd like to do is just briefly explore these. So strong governance, again, having that process that makes the relationship work, and there's a number of factors there, is really key. It's about regular meetings, regular interaction, both formal and informal, is building a relationship for the long term. You build the relationship for the long term, so when you hit problems or stormy waters, you know, there's some understanding, there's some building there, you can work then to work through that. It's not waiting until the problem to work there. It's also having, you know, clearly defined roles and responsibilities, who does what, how do we communicate. So strong governance is you know, the first key factor. It's about measuring value and success. So if you have a relationship, is, you know, what are the KPIs we're going to use? How are we going to measure the performance? How are we going to change those? It's about measuring in real time and being able to share that information and be open and honest about what's happening. It's measure both hard and soft aspects of value. So financial is easy. Everyone has systems that measure finance to the nth decimal point. But there's other factors which are just, you know, value driven. How's the relationship going? Are we collaborating? How do we measure those? Looking forward, there's definitely a case for periodic business review meetings and having that governance in there, but there's also that much more formal integration. And there's obviously communicating value and success. So what that is not just focusing on things have gone wrong, we've missed, what's actually working. There's a key thing in a strategic partnership, again, it's a long-term relationship around mutual trust and confidence, clear expectations, setting those out. Again, a lot of frequent face-to-face meetings, articulating the pain. If there's a problem on my side, what happens on your side? What's the consequence of that? Do I understand the consequence? Conversely, if something changes either that way. It's demonstrating mutual dependence and again, being able to articulate what that looks like. A lot of supporting and encouraging, and again, being transparent and honest. Openness, honesty and transparency is absolutely key. You know, having the right information at the right time to make the right decisions is really, really important. You know, again, it's timely sharing, clear escalation, no surprises. You know, so surprises often are things change dramatically. They often change because there's a factor that beyond control, but being able to understand that and react. You know, a classic example is forecasts. Forecasts fall into two categories: wrong and lucky. You know, having a forecast decrease is one problem. Having a forecast suddenly increase is a completely different problem, but it's still a problem. How do we react to that? How do we understand? Again, understanding the value, but also the pain on both sides. What will that mean? But it's taking the time to build that trust and relationship. So when we have these issues, again, we're on a basis, and it must be a two-way process based on mutual respect. It can't be as, yes, I understand your problem, but you're a very small customer to me. You're really not my problem. I have bigger customers to worry about. That shouldn't be happening in a strategic partnership. There's a key thing about delivering on the promise. So in any relationship, again, people want to see things are delivered on time, in full. There's regular checks and balances in place. We know things are happening in the appropriate manner. Prioritisation is clearly agreed and understood. There aren't suddenly massive shifts in prioritisation. And if there are, the impacts are clearly understood. There are agreed achievable timescales. Everyone wants things to go faster, but if something takes 6 weeks, it takes 6 weeks. Is it understood it takes 6 weeks? Again, trying to condense it down to less than 6 weeks is just going to mean that we probably won't deliver. It will be doomed to failure. Again, understanding the dependencies properly if delivery is to be successful. If I'm waiting for your party to supply me with something before I can do an activity, I'm dependent on that. And if you're late, I'll be late. Is that understood? You know, because you're late, my timelines will shift. And identifying and removing barriers. So particularly working intercompany, different processes, different cultures, different approaches. What are the barriers? How do you remove those to make things work? Mutual goals and benefits, clearly, if it's a strategic partnership, there should be some visibility on strategic planning. If we're going to take a product all the way through to commercial launch, do we need to build capability for 2 or 3 years' time? Now that feels like a long way away, but sometimes to build something significant probably takes 2 to 3 years. Let's have that conversation now. Let's look at the risks and benefits. Do I need to think about building it? If we're not going to build it, how are we going to mitigate risk? You know, what does the launch program look like? Do we have a launch program? What does the forecast look like? What's the risk associated? You know, so it's looking at those things, and again, identifying that, but also looking at the partner and saying sometimes, you know, from a commercial launch, we can provide advice about what might be the right thing to do, what are alternative approaches, listening to that advice. How do we do that? And again, getting clear investment and ownership to deliver on both sides. And continuous improvement should never be ignored. So obviously, it can be that during development you can identify opportunities to improve things, to make things better, cheaper, faster, etc. So it's identifying those and capturing those and making sure that they're in the system and identified. It's again exploring the connections between the two parties and identifying ways that we can leverage knowledge and expertise to solve those. It's also about having, if you're identifying opportunities, acting on them and having the right people in place. There's nothing worse than identifying a list of continuous opportunities, of improvement opportunities that no one's ever going to get to because they're too busy doing the day job or the project. It's how do we, if we're going to do continuous improvement, you identify those and act. And it's creating that culture for innovation and continuous improvement. So in summary, in this short presentation, value creation is ever evolving, and you need to have a conversation about what that looks like. And it has both the tangible aspects, which are easy to measure, and people spend a lot of time and effort measuring, and the intangible aspects, the softer aspects. You need to identify those. In terms of strategic partnerships, it's a key trend for the industry in all sectors. You see more and more long-term strategic partners being set up, not just on a project basis, but for a much longer-term relationship over a portfolio basis. People are outsourcing more, but it's more strategic and thought through. This is a longer-term relationship. It is highly beneficial to all parties involved. So being in a successful strategic partnership is actually very beneficial, and it really is quite a good place to be. Because again, there's a lot of benefits. It generates a level of understanding and service on both sides that really helps. But it does require patience, effort and commitment. And this is probably the one weakness is why a lot of them fail. People get impatient, they're not willing to put the effort in, and the commitment is kind of, yes, we need a strategic partnership, but really I've got a lot of other things I need to be doing, and it doesn't get that level of commitment.